So for our next practice problem, we have evaluate the integral of differential of x all over 4x squared plus 9. So sa integrand natin, we have a perfect square function of x, that is 4x squared. And then we have a perfect square constant, that is 9. So yung function of x, we designate that as u. So this is u squared. And then we have plus 9 is a constant, so this is a squared. Now this particular equation right here falls under case 2. And then yung substitution natin for case 2 is equal to u equals a tangent theta. So let us now try to find the values for u and a. From our equation, we have 4x squared is equal to u squared. So writing that class, so we have u squared is equal to 4x squared. So getting the square root of both sides, so we have u equals 2x. And then since in our equation a squared is equal to 9, therefore a squared equals 9, getting the square root of both sides, so we have a equals 3. So these are now yung values ni u tsaka ni 3. So let us now try to substitute doon sa trigo substitution equation natin na u equals a tangent theta. So since u is equal to a tangent theta, therefore yung value ni u is 2x and yung value ni a is 3, and then we have tangent theta. So this is now yung corresponding trigonometric substitution natin for the value of 2x. May 2x is equal to 3 tangent theta. Now, the very goal of trigonometric substitution is to transform yung mga x variables dun sa integrand natin into its corresponding trigonometric function with the variable theta. So we need to find a substitution for differential x in terms of theta and a substitution for 4x squared plus 9 in terms of theta. Okay, so differential x, makukuha natin yan dun sa equation natin na 2x equals 3 tangent theta. So dividing both sides by 2, we will get the equation x equals 3 halves tangent theta. And then getting the differential, so we have the differential of x now is equal to constant na 3 halves, and then the derivative of tangent is secant squared theta. And then since differential yung kinuha natin, we should write yung differential theta sa dulo. So this is now our substitution for differential x. The other substitution, 4x squared plus 9, makukuha natin by rewriting this equation right here. 2x may equals 3 tangent theta. So from the equation 2x equals 3 tangent theta, getting an equation for theta, so we have tangent theta is equal to, divide both sides by 3, so we have 2x all over 3. And this will now be yung magiging guide natin to draw yung corresponding right triangle for case 2. So from the concept of SOHCAHTOA, tangent theta is equal to opposite over adjacent. So we have an equation for tangent theta, so our numerator will be yung opposite side natin, and then yung denominator natin will be yung adjacent side naman. Now let us try to draw yung corresponding triangle. So the triangle right here, we have theta, and then sa equation natin, opposite side daw is equal to 2x. So the opposite side is equal to 2x, and then yung adjacent side is equal to 3. And then to get the equation for the hypotenuse, we simply get the sum of the square of two sides. So the square of 2x is 4x squared, and the square of 3 is 9. So this side right here, yung hypotenuse natin, is equal to 4x squared plus 9. And doon sa equation natin, ang kailangan natin ay 4x squared plus 9. So we should get an equation for 4x squared plus 9 in terms of trigo functions. So, going back dito sa triangle natin, we are going to relate yung hypotenuse natin, si theta, and yung constant na leg ng triangle natin. We do not want to relate to x because ang ginagawa natin is tinatransform natin yung variable na x. So, ang kailangan natin i-relate kay 4x squared plus 9 is yung constant. So, that is why we will be using the cosine function for our substitution. So, our cosine function, cosine theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. The adjacent side being 3. So, we have 3 all over hypotenuse side being square root of 4x squared plus 9. And then, transforming our equation class, getting an equation for square root of 4x squared plus 9 equals 3 all over cosine theta. And then getting the square of both sides, square natin yung left side and then we will square yung right side so we can have an equation for 4x squared plus 9. So that is equal to 3 squared is equal to 9 all over cosine theta squared is simply cosine squared theta. And then, simplifying by trigonometric identities, 1 all over cosine theta is equal to secant theta. Our equation will be reduced to 4x squared plus 9 equals 9 secant squared theta. This will now be our substitution for 4x squared plus 9 in terms of theta. So, from our original integral, let us now try to transform integral of dx all over 4x squared plus 9. Yung differential x natin, differential x is equal to 3 halves secant squared theta d theta. So, our integral will be 3 halves secant squared theta d theta. And then, the whole 4x squared plus 9, we substitute by 4x squared plus 9 is equal to 9 secant squared theta. So, we have sa denominator natin, we have 9 secant squared theta. Okay. And then, we cancel yung mga common terms sa numerator tsaka denominator. So, we have secant squared, we have secant squared, and then we have 3 sa numerator, tapos we have a 3 here. What will be remain here is 3. So, 2 times 3 will be 6. So, we have integral of, sa numerator natin, ang may iwan na lang is d theta. And then, sa denominator natin is 2 times 3, we have 6. Or you can simply use your calculators to simplify. Now, continuing our solution, yung constant na 1 over 6, we can write that outside the integral sign. So, we have 1/6 integral of d theta. So, this is now our corresponding integral. And then, integrating, so we have 1 all over 6. The integral of d theta, the integral of d theta is simply theta. And then, constant of integration plus c. And then lastly, since our original integrand or our original integral is in terms of x, so our integral is in terms of theta, we need to revert si theta into its corresponding x value. So, ang gagawin natin, babalikan natin si tangent theta equals 2x all over 3 para ma-revert natin si theta into its corresponding x value. So, from the equation, tangent theta is equal to 2x all over 3. So, getting the arctangent of both sides, so we have theta equals arctangent of 2x all over 3. So, this will now be our corresponding substitution for theta in our integral. So, we have simplifying 1 all over 6. Theta is equal to arctangent of 2x all over 3. And then we have plus c. So this is now our final answer. This is now our integral. So for our next practice problem, let us evaluate the integral of x squared dx all over square root of 4 minus x squared. Now, the goal of trigonometric substitution is to transform yung integrand natin or the algebraic functions sa integrand natin into their corresponding trigonometric functions in terms of another variable, theta. Now, all parts of the integrand, we will find a substitution in terms of theta. So, we will be finding a substitution for x squared, for differential x, and square root of 4 minus x squared. So, first, we need to determine which case does our integrand fall into. So, sa integrand natin, meron tayong 4, which is a perfect square constant, minus x squared, which is a perfect square function of x. So since 4 is a constant, this will be a squared, and then since x squared is a function of x, this will be u squared, and their operator is subtraction. So we have a squared minus u squared. This particular substitution falls under case 1, and our corresponding substitution is u equals a sine theta. So let us determine the values of u and a. So since a squared is equal to 4, a squared is equal to 4, getting the square root of both sides, we will get a is equal to 2. And since yung u squared is equal to x squared, we write that down. U squared is equal to x squared, getting the square root of both sides. U is equal to x. Okay. Now, substituting yung u values and a values sa ating trigonometric substitution, from u is equal to a sine theta, we get u is equal to x, so we have x equals a is equal to 2, and then we have sine theta. So we now have a substitution for x in terms of theta. So that is 1 down. So we now have a value for x. I-square na lang natin siya mamaya. Okay? And then, to find a substitution for dx or differential x, we simply differentiate or get the differential of x. So the differential of x, that is equal to constant na 2. So we have 2. And then the derivative of sine theta is cosine theta. And differential kinukuha natin, so don't forget yung differential theta sa dulo. So this is now our substitution for differential x. Kailangan na lang natin substitution for square root of 4 minus x squared. In order to do so, we will get this equation, x is equal to 2 sine theta. So from x is equal to 2 sine theta, we find an equation for sine theta. So sine theta is equal to x all over 2. Si 2 bumaba lang dito sa as denominator ni x. So this is now our equation for sine theta. This will be our guide in drawing the corresponding triangle ng trigosub natin. So since from the concept of SOHCAHTOA, we can conclude that x is our opposite side and 2 is our hypotenuse. So drawing the corresponding triangle, we have our right triangle here. If this angle is theta, our opposite side is equal to x, and then our hypotenuse is equal to 2. And the equation of this side right here can be found by using Pythagorean theorem. So we have the square of the hypotenuse, 2 squared is equal to 4, and then minus the square of the other side, which is x. So the square of x is x squared. So let us now find a substitution for square root of 4 minus x squared. So relating this side and then the hypotenuse with theta. So the function that we will be using is from SOHCAHTOA. The function that we will be using is the cosine function. Cosine theta is equal to, the adjacent side is square root of 4 minus x squared. So square root of 4 minus x squared all over the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is 2. So we write 2. This is now our equation for cosine theta. And then simply we rewrite this para makahanap tayo ng equivalent of square root of 4 minus x squared. Therefore, from this equation, we have square root of 4 minus x squared to be equal to 2 cosine theta. So this is now the corresponding substitution for square root of 4 minus x squared. So we have now determined a substitution for all parts of the integrand. We can now try to solve for the particular integral. So finding the integral, let us just rewrite integral of x squared dx all over square root of 4 minus x squared. Substitute x squared, the equation for x squared in our substitution, the equation for x is equal to 2 sine theta. So we have 2 sine theta, and then we square. And then differential x is equal to 2 cosine theta d theta. And then over square root of 4 minus x squared, that is equal to 2 cosine theta. So we have for our denominator so 2 cosine theta sa numerator magka-cancel sa 2 cosine theta sa denominator. So simplifying, so we have integral of 2 sine theta squared, and then we have d theta. And distributing yung square sa loob ng parenthesis, we get integral of 4 sine squared theta d theta. So we have a constant na 4. Pwede natin yung ilabas sa integral sign natin. So we have 4 integral of sine squared theta d theta. Now, sa topic natin na trigonometric integrals for sine or cosine function with even powers, ang substitution or the identity na gagamitin natin will be half-angle identities. So, for sine squared theta, ang half-angle identity natin is equal to 1 minus cosine 2 theta all over 2. So, this will now be yung substitution natin for sine squared theta. So from our equation, we have 4 integral of sine squared theta is equal to 1 minus cosine 2 theta all over 2, and then d theta. And then we have 1/2 sa integrand natin. Pwede natin siyang ilabas sa integral sign. So 4 divided by 2, that is equal to 2. So we have 2 integral of, our integrand will be 1 minus cosine 2 theta d theta. Okay, continuing the solution, we can now integrate. So integrating, we have yung constant na 2. Integral of 1 with respect to theta is theta minus cosine 2 theta. Our angle has a coefficient of 2, so we will be multiplying our integral first with 1/2, and then the integral of cosine is simply sine 2 theta. And then at the end of the integral, we add plus c. So distributing 2 at both sides of the equation, we have 2 theta minus 2 times 1/2 is 1. So what's left here is sine 2 theta plus c. So we have sine 2 theta. Ang kailangan na lang natin gawin is i-replace si sine 2 theta with its corresponding identity. So we have a double angle formula. So for sine 2 theta, our corresponding trigonometric identity is 2 sine theta cosine theta. Okay, so let us now simplify our equation. We have 2 theta minus sine 2 theta is equal to 2 sine theta cosine theta. And then the constant of integration plus c. And then lastly, we need to replace all theta with the function x. Since our original integral is in terms of x, so our answer should be in terms of x. So we have theta, we have sine theta, and cosine theta. From our substitutions earlier, we have derived an equation for sine theta. For cosine theta, ang kailangan na lang natin is theta. So from sine theta is equal to x all over 2. So getting the arcsine of both sides, so we have theta is equal to arcsine of x all over 2. So this is now our substitution for theta. Pwede din naman si cosine theta yung gamitin natin, but since yung ginamit natin sa original substitution is x equals 2 sine theta, ang gagamitin natin for theta will be derived from the sine function. Okay, so we now have theta, sine theta, and cosine theta. Let us now replace at our original equation. So we have 2 theta is equal to arcsine of x all over 2, and then minus 2 sine theta is equal to x all over 2, and then for cosine theta is equal to square root of 4 minus x squared all over 2, and then at the end of our equation plus c. Simplifying, so we have 2 arcsine x all over 2 minus the 2's will cancel each other out, so we are left with x square root of 4 minus x squared all over 2, and then lastly plus c. This is now our integral. So let us answer practice problem number 4. So let us evaluate the integral of x cubed square root of 4x squared minus 1 with respect to x. Now, sa ating trigonometric substitution, we need to recognize yung pattern kung papasok ba siya sa case 1, case 2, or case 3. So we have 4x squared, which is a perfect square function of x, and then we have 1, which is a perfect square constant. So perfect square function of x, we will call this u squared, and then c1, we will call this a squared. So we have u squared minus a squared. This particular form falls under case number 3. And sa case number 3, our corresponding substitution is u is equal to a secant theta. So let us determine u and a. So since u squared is equal to 4x squared, let us write u squared is equal to 4x squared. Getting the square root of both sides, we get u is equal to 2x. And then since a squared is equal to 1, we write a squared is equal to 1 getting the square root of both sides. So we have a is equal to 1. So these are now the corresponding values of u and a. Going back to our substitution, u is equal to 2x. Therefore, we have 2x equals a is equal to 1. And then we have secant theta. So this is now our substitution for x. We only simplify it to find an equation for x. So we have x is equal to secant theta all over 2. So this is now our substitution for x. So we now have a substitution for x. Let us find a substitution for differential x. So for differential x, we simply get the differential of this equation. So getting the differential, so we have differential of x is equal to, we have 1/2 as our constant, and then the derivative of secant theta is secant theta tangent theta. And since differential ang kinukuha natin, huwag natin kakalimutan yung differential theta sa dulo. Okay, so this is now our equation for differential x. Kailangan na lang nating maghanap ng substitution for square root of 4x squared minus 1. And makukuha natin yan by basing from this equation 2x is equal to secant theta. So getting yung substitution natin kanina, 2x is equal to secant theta. That is from this equation, tinanggal lang natin yung 1. And then knowing that the reciprocal of cosine function is secant function, we can rewrite our equation as such. So we have 2x equals 1 all over cosine theta. And then rearranging yung equation natin, we get cosine theta that is equal to 1 all over 2x. So from the concept of SOHCAHTOA, we have our numerator as our adjacent side, and then we have our denominator as the hypotenuse side. Then we can draw the corresponding right triangle. So drawing a right triangle with this as theta, our adjacent side is 1, and then our hypotenuse side is 2x. So this side right here can be calculated from the Pythagorean theorem, which is the square of the hypotenuse. So the square of 2x is 4x squared, and then we subtract the square of the other leg, which is 1. So the square of 1 is simply 1. So these are now the three sides of our triangle. And then to find an equation or the corresponding trigonometric function for square root of 4x squared minus 1, we relate this side doon sa constant, which is 1. Since this side is the opposite the angle theta, and this side is adjacent to the angle theta, we will use the tangent function. Tangent theta is equal to opposite side, which is 4x squared minus 1 all over the adjacent side 1. So effectively, tangent theta is equal to square root of 4x squared minus 1. So this is now our substitution for 4x squared, square root of 4x squared minus 1. So having determined all the substitutions required for this particular problem, let us now try to solve for the integral. So we have this equation. And then substituting the corresponding values of x. So we have x is equal to secant theta all over 2. So we substitute x in this equation with and then square root of 4x squared minus 1, that is equal to square root of 4x squared minus 1 is equal to tangent theta. So we write here tangent theta. And then differential x. For differential x, it is this equation right here. So we write 1/2 secant theta tangent theta and then d theta. And then let's perform the operation cube for this particular function. So we simplify integral of secant cube theta all over 2 cube is equal to 8. And then we have tangent theta. And then we have 1/2 secant theta tangent theta d theta. And then next gagawin natin, lahat ng constant dito sa equation natin, ilalabas natin sa integral sign. So we have 1/8, we have 1/2. So pag nilabas natin, they will combine into 1 all over 16. And then integral sign. And then we combine all like terms here in our equation. So we have 3 secant theta here and then another secant theta here. So all in all, we have 4 secant thetas. So secant to the 4th theta. And then we have tangent theta, tangent theta. All in all, we have 2 tangent thetas. Tangent squared theta. And then we have differential theta. And then for our next step, since the power of secant is an even integer, we will resolve secant into its corresponding secant squared components. So ibig sabihin, we have 1 all over 16. Integral of secant to the 4th theta has 2 secant squared theta. So 1 secant squared theta, another secant squared theta, and then tangent squared theta, and then the theta. And then we substitute 1 secant theta with its corresponding Pythagorean identity. So we will transform secant theta or secant squared theta into tangent squared theta. So we have 1 all over 16. So our Pythagorean identity for secant squared theta is secant squared theta is equal to tangent squared theta plus 1. So we will substitute this equation into the integral. So we have secant squared theta, and then 1 secant squared theta we will replace with tangent squared theta plus 1. And then lastly, we have tangent squared theta d theta. So again, a reminder, when integrating, when substituting, it is very important that we leave 1 secant squared theta in our integrand, since this will be our differential u when we substitute. So by using the method of substitution, we have u is equal to tangent theta. Therefore, the differential u is equal to secant squared theta d theta. So, rewriting our equation again, 1 all over 16, integral of, so si secant squared theta, tsaka si d theta, they will combine into du. And then lahat ng tangent function, papalitan natin ng u. So, we have tangent squared, this will be u squared plus 1. And then another tangent squared, this will be u squared. And then secant squared theta d theta will be du. And then distributing u, 1 all over 16 integral of u raised to 4 plus u squared differential u. So integrating this function, we have 1 all over 16, and then the integral of u raised to 4 is u raised to 5 all over 5. And then plus integral of u squared is u cubed all over 3. And then sa dulo, constant of integration plus c. And then next, we will distribute 1 all over 16 to both sides of the equation, and lahat ng u papalitan natin ng tangent theta. So u raised to 5 magiging tangent raised to 5 theta. And then 16 times 5, that is 80. And then plus, we have u cube, magiging tangent cube theta all over 16 times 3 is 48. And then plus c. And then next, lastly, since our integrand is in terms of x, so our original function is in terms of x, so dapat yung final answer natin should be in terms of x. So lahat ng tangent theta, papalitan natin ng square root of 4x squared minus 1. So we have square root of 4x squared minus 1 raised to 5 all over 80. And then plus square root of 4x squared minus 1 raised to 3 all over 48 plus c. And then simplifying, we have 4x squared minus 1 raised to 5 halves all over 80, and then plus 4x squared minus 1 raised to 3 halves all over 48 plus c. And this is now our final answer for this particular problem. Now, this equation can also be simplified into many other forms, but that is left for the student to explore. So we can set this as our final answer. Okay, for our next practice problem, we have evaluate the integral of x squared dx all over x squared plus 16 raised to 3 halves. So sa trigo substitution, ang gagawin natin is we will find a substitution for all parts of our integrand. So maghahanap tayo ng substitution for x squared, another substitution for dx, and a substitution for x squared plus 16. So that is the goal of trigo substitution. Now, in order to do so, let us first determine kung saan case magko-fall yung ating integrand. So, sa integrand natin, meron tayong x squared, which is a perfect square function of x. And then we have 16, which is a perfect square constant. So, we will take x squared as u squared. And then, we have 16 as a squared. And pag positive yung operator natin, that falls under case 2. Our substitution will be u is equal to a tangent of theta. So that will be our substitution. And ito yung magiging guide natin para makuha lahat ng substitution para sa lahat ng parts ng ating integrand. So first, let us determine the values of u and a. From our equation, we can see that u squared is equal to x squared. So getting the square root of both sides, we get u is equal to x. And then sa equation natin, we can see that yung a squared is correspondent to 16. So a squared is equal to 16. Getting the square root of both sides, we get a is equal to 4. And then substituting doon sa ating trigonometric substitution, from u equals a tangent theta. U is equal to x, so we have x equals a is equal to 4, so we have 4 tangent theta. So this will now be yung substitution natin for x. Ang gagawin na lang natin para makuha natin sa x squared is e-square na lang natin to later on sa ating equation. So that is for x. Let us now find a substitution for dx. Finding a substitution for dx, we simply differentiate or get the differential of x is equal to 4 tangent theta. So getting the differential of x, so we have differential x is equal to the constant 4, and then the derivative of tangent theta is secant squared theta. And then, since differential yung kinukuha natin, we have differential theta. So we now have another substitution for differential x. Ang kailangan na lang natin is yung substitution for x squared plus 16. And makukuha natin yan by drawing yung corresponding triangle from x is equal to 4 tangent theta. So let us draw yung triangle. Start tayo sa x equals 4 tangent theta. And then we rearrange the equation to find an equation for tangent theta. That is equal to x all over 4. We divide both sides by 4. And by the concept of SOHCAHTOA, pagka tangent theta yung function natin, yung numerator natin is yung opposite side of the right triangle, and yung denominator natin is the adjacent side of the triangle. So with that as a guide, we will draw yung right triangle natin. This is theta, and from our equation, the opposite side of theta is x, and then the adjacent side of theta is 4. And by Pythagorean theorem, we calculate the value of the hypotenuse. So this will be the sum of the squares of the sides of the right triangle. So we have the square of x is x squared plus the square of 4 is 16. And then next, we relate theta with the hypotenuse and the constant 4. So we have a hypotenuse tapos adjacent. Ang trigo function na gagamitin natin will be cosine. So using the cosine function, cosine theta, ang sabi sa SOHCAHTOA, cosine is equal to adjacent all over hypotenuse. Yung adjacent side natin is 4. And then yung hypotenuse side natin is square root of x squared plus 16. And then rearranging this equation, getting an equation for square root of x squared plus 16, we get 4 all over cosine theta. And since the reciprocal of cosine theta is secant theta, we can rewrite this equation. So we have square root of x squared plus 16 is equal to 4 secant theta. So going back dun sa ating integrand, ang kailangan natin is x squared plus 16. We have an equation for square root of x squared plus 16. Ang gagawin na lang natin, we will get the square of both sides. So square natin itong left side and then get the square of the right side. We get an equation for x squared plus 16. That is equal to 4 squared is 16. And then secant theta squared is secant squared theta. So this will now be our substitution for the third part of our integrand, x squared plus 16. Ang gagawin na natin, we will be rewriting yung original integrand natin into its corresponding trigonometric functions. Okay, so rewriting yung integral natin. So we have x squared dx all over x squared plus 16 and then raised to 3 halves. And then let us substitute yung mga variables. So we have, first is x squared. So meron tayong equation for x na 4 tangent theta. So let us just substitute that. So we have 4 tangent theta. And then i-squared natin. And then the equation for differential x is equal to 4 secant squared theta. So we write 4 secant squared theta. And then wag kalimutan si d theta. All over x squared plus 16, yung nakuha nating equation for x squared plus 16 is 16 secant squared theta. So we write 16 secant squared theta and then we raise to 3 halves. So now we have this equation. Let us now just simplify. So simplifying the integrand, so we have 4 squared and then we have tangent squared theta. Tapos dito we have 4 secant squared theta d theta all over 16 raised to 3 halves, that is equal to 64. And then secant squared, erase natin sa 3 halves. Yung 2 will cancel each other out. So we will be left with secant cube theta. So this is now yung simplification ng ating integrand. Sa numerator, i-combine lang natin si 4 tsaka si 4 squared. So again, rewriting the equation, we have 4 cubed, and then we have tangent squared theta, secant squared theta, d theta, all over 64 secant cube theta. So i-cancel na natin yung mga pwede i-cancel. So we have secant squared dito, and then secant cube, may iwan dito na isang secant theta. And then si 4 raised to 3 or 4 cube, that will be equal to 64. So this will cancel each other out. So we will be left with the integral of tangent squared theta d theta all over secant theta. And then next, we replace tangent squared with its corresponding Pythagorean identity. From our Pythagorean identity, tangent squared theta is equal to secant squared theta minus 1. So replacing tangent squared with secant squared theta minus 1. So we have secant squared theta minus 1 d theta all over secant theta. And then we simplify further yung ating integrand. Simplifying the integrand further, we have integral of distributing yung denominator natin. So we have secant squared theta all over secant theta, and then minus 1 all over secant theta, and then we have d theta. And then i-simplify na lang natin yung equation natin. So secant theta will cancel dito. So we have the integral of, ang may iwan na lang dito is sa numerator secant theta, and then minus the reciprocal of secant theta is cosine theta. And then we have d theta. And then we can now integrate this equation. So we have an integral for secant theta. So the integral of secant theta is ln of secant theta plus tangent theta minus the integral of cosine theta is sine theta. And then sa dulo, we add yung plus c. So this is now our integral in terms of theta. Kailangan pa natin siya i-transform into an equation in terms of x. So we will find an equation for secant theta, tangent theta, and sine theta. So meron na tayong mga nakuha kanina. Balik tayo dun sa ating mga transformation. We have a corresponding value for tangent theta. Meron tayong tangent theta dito. Ang kailangan natin is secant theta tsaka sine theta. So, to find an equation for secant theta, kunin natin tong equation natin for cosine theta. I-rewrite lang natin. So, since cosine theta is equal to 4 all over the square root of x squared plus 16. Therefore, since the reciprocal of cosine theta is secant theta, therefore, secant theta is simply the reciprocal of cosine theta. So we have square root of x squared plus 16 all over 4. So this is now our substitution for secant theta. So meron na tayong substitution for secant theta. For tangent theta, kailangan na lang natin is for sine theta. So para makakuha tayo ng substitution for sine theta, we will refer to this triangle na na-draw natin kanina. Sine theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. So sine theta is equal to the opposite side of theta right here is x, and the hypotenuse is square root of x squared plus 16. So those are the parts na kailangan natin sa ating integral. So replace na natin. So we have ln of secant theta is equal to square root of x squared plus 16 all over 4. And then plus yung tangent theta natin. Tangent theta daw is equal to x all over 4. So we have x all over 4. And then minus sine theta. Sine theta daw is equal to x all over square root of x squared plus 16. And then sa dulo, wag kakalimutan yung constant of integration plus c. And then meron pa tayong mga simplification na pwede i-apply dito sa ating integral. So at this part of the equation, meron tayong common denominator na 4. So we have square root of x squared plus 16 and then plus x. This will be yung numerator natin all over a denominator of 4. And then copy paste x all over square root of x squared plus 16 plus c. And then by the concept of logarithms, ln of a minus ln of b, that is equal to ln of a over b. So using this concept of logarithms, we will rewrite this particular logarithm into ln of a minus ln of b, with a as yung numerator and b as yung denominator. So simplifying, we have ln of square root of x squared plus 16 and then plus x. So this is now yung ln ng numerator natin minus ln ng denominator natin, which is ln of 4. And then copy paste na lang yung last part of the equation. So we have negative x all over square root of x squared plus 16 and then sa dulo plus c. And then since ln of 4 is a constant, pwede na natin siyang i-combine dun sa ating constant of integration. So we have the answer ln of square root of x squared plus 16 plus x and then minus x all over square root of x squared plus 16 plus c. And this can be our final answer. Again, other simplifications or other transformations ng ating final answer, pwede nyo pang explore, but for now, this will be enough. So this is now the solution for sample problem number 5.